Assalamu alaikum guys, welcome to my YouTube channel with the second part of the chapter number 3, the sounds of language. So let's get started. Types of articulators. There are basically two types of articulators, the active articulators and passive articulators. Active articulators actually move toward the other articulators, that is why they are called active articulators. And its contrary, passive articulators which do not move, remain constant, are called the passive articulators. Place of articulation. The location at which two speech organs approach or come together in producing speech sounds, as in the contact of the tongue and teeth to form a dental sound. Place of articulation is named after the passive articulators. Manner of articulation is concerned with the degree of stricture in the vocal tract, which refers to how close the articulator gets when a sound is formed. For example, they may touch and form a firm seal or approach each other with a small gap of air to escape. Consonant manner of articulation. Stops or the plosives. In producing a stop consonant, we block the airflow briefly, then let it go abruptly. In stop, what do? Stop for a moment and then we let it go abruptly, just like as in this pa sound and ta sound and ka sound. These are the voiceless stops, and voice stops are the ba, da, and ga sound. Here is the example that pet begins and ends with the voiceless stop, then bad begins and ends with voice stop. Here is a pictorial representation of the plosives, that when we produce bilabial sound, then plosive or the stop occurs at the both the lips. In the alveolar sound, while we produce alveolar, then stops occur between tongue and the alveolar ridge. And then the velar, there is stop between the velum and the back of the tongue. This is how the stop occur at the three different positions. Fricatives. To produce fricatives, we almost block the airflow and force it through a narrow gap, creating a type of friction. How the fricatives are produced? We almost block the airflow and then force it through a narrow gap. Actually, it creates some type of friction. There are the voiceless fricatives, which are the fa, th, sa, sh, and ha sound. The fish begins and ends with voiceless fricative. Voice fricatives are v, the, z, and y sound. So the word those begins and ends with voice fricatives. Affricates. When we combine a brief stopping of the airflow with the release through a narrow gap, we stop some sound for the brief moment and then we let it go through the narrow gap. Such types of sounds are named affricates. Voiceless affricate are the ch sound in the beginning of jeep, and voiced affricates are j in the beginning of jeep. Nasals. Nasals are produced when the velum is lowered, allowing air to flow out through the nose. We can produce nasal like m sound, n sound, and ing sound. What is the difference between oral cavity and nasal cavity? Oral sounds are those sounds in which the airflow is passing through the mouth, and nasal sound, you will notice in the next picture that airflow is passing through the nasal cavity. When we produce the sound which are passed through the oral cavity, and those particular sound, our nasal cavity is blocked through the velum. But it's contrary, when you produce the nasal sound, you will see that the oral cavity is almost blocked by the velum. Here is the pictorial representation, as well as you will see the compare that how the nasal articulation is formed out and how the oral articulation is formed. In the left side picture, there is the nasal articulation. When we produce any nasal sound, then the air flow is going through the nasal cavity. But here At the right side, you can see that oral articulation is uh, totally open and the nasal cavity is blocked through the velum. So this is how you can see and compare the nasal articulation as well as oral articulation. Liquids. Two Y's sound just like the sound with the letter L and with the letter R are described as liquid. L sound as in lead and in light is formed by letting the air flow around the side of the tongue as the tip touches near the alveolar ridge. R sound as in red and right is formed with the tongue tip raised and curled back near the alveolar ridge. Glides. Glides are produced with the motion of tongue or glide to or from the position of wall. Mean the tongue position is moved either front or at the back side. This is how the glides occur. The word sound W and Y are described as glides. This letter J, which is in the bracket, don't consider it J sound, it is Y sound according to IPA chart or the International Phonetic Alphabet chart. Glides are also called semi-vowel. Words we, wit, yes and you begin with the glides. Here is a table of all the consonant sound with their place, their manner, and either they are the voiced or the voiceless. So you can stop the video here and you can note down their position as well as either they are the voiced or the voiceless. So see you in the very next lecture with the remaining portion of this chapter. Till then, Allah Hafiz.